Hi, I'm Gary Thorup, founder of the Posterity Project. It's been our honor to produce this video, and we hope you'll love it. Our mission is to help people preserve and share their personal legacy for free. And we do that because we firmly believe everyone has important stories to share, regardless of financial means. On the flip side, this work is a resource-intensive effort. So, to provide this service for free, we really need your help. Please subscribe to this channel. Share links with friends and family on social media. Buy a keepsake from our store. If you're watching this on YouTube, we have links to these and more below this video. Anything you can do to help support our mission would be sincerely appreciated. From the team here at the Posterity Project, thank you, and we hope you cherish this personal legacy video. All right, we'll get started. Morning, Carol.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Super excited to talk to you and learn about your life and your stories and everything about you. So
We'll need about 20 years.
I wish we had more time. I can tell already this is going to be a fun conversation. So I'm really looking forward to it. So let's start off with the basics.
Hi, I'm Carol, and I was born in 1936, April 4th. I was born one of twins. My identical twin survived 6 weeks, so I never really knew her. We were just roommates.
That's a really, I hadn't heard that before. It's a little macabre, something a little macabre about that, but the way you delivered that is terrific. Very good. Carol, what were your parents' names, and do you know what years they were born?
No, but I can tell you how old they were that they lived to. My mother's name was Charlotte Clayman, and her married name was Green because that was my father's birth name. And the rest of the question was?
I was wondering what year in your father's name?
Oh, William Green. He didn't have a middle name. If he did, he wouldn't divulge it, because I was never sure about that. But he became a well-known pianist in at least all of New England. But he recorded with Columbia Records in his later life, and he was considered one of the finest pianists in the country at the time.
Do you have any siblings?
I have 2 surviving siblings. I had an identical twin. I was born one of identical twins, and she only lasted 6 weeks. But I always wondered what it would be like to grow up looking at a mirror image of myself, you know. But I have question was, do I have any siblings? A twin and 2 sisters, surviving sisters. The middle gal was Judith Arlene, and the baby of the family was Lynn. I don't know if Lynn had a middle name. I don't think she did. And she was married. Judy was married. And of course, I was married one time to the right and only guy. And the only wrong thing he did was die too young.
That's a great introduction. Could you give a brief overview to us of yourself, as if you were just introducing yourself at a dinner party, you're getting to know people, and somebody asked, well, hey, Carol, nice to meet you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
It's hard to tell you a little bit because I've done so much in my life. I was willing to get into anything and everything. That part of me was encouraged by my mom. She'd always say, You don't know until you try whether you can do it or you can't do it. And I was right there to do her words.
That's great. I'm detecting a little Boston area accent. Yeah. So
I knew that was coming.
I grew up on Cape Cod.
Oh,
Yeah. So my dad grew up in Linfield. Where are you from originally?
Boston proper, Roxbury, Massachusetts. And Roxbury 21, Massachusetts, because then they didn't have a 5-digit area code. And I lived there till I married, and then my husband and I moved to what my folks referred to as the country, because we moved to Holliston, Mass. I found a lovely new built house, four apartment complex, and spent the first year of my marriage there until we bought a house of our own. And that was in Framingham, Mass. And that's where I spent most of my years until I moved to Florida.
Thinking about your parents, can you think of the most important lesson that they gave to you?
My father stressed perfection, as close to perfection as you could get. He didn't demand it, but he always was encouraging us to do better, to do better. And I was one of, I think I mentioned already that my twin sister died, but I had 2 more sisters, and we all were brought up to do the very best we could. And
Is there anything that your parents didn't get to know about you that you wish they had?
no, we were very honest with each other and open. And I always felt, and I suppose there are many people who do, that I had the best parents in the world. That they met each other and married because they came from very different backgrounds, but they had a beautiful marriage, which I tried to emulate, and my husband and I succeeded in doing. The only thing he did wrong was die too young.
Was there a favorite meal that you remember your mother or father making for you?
My mother was such a phenomenal cook that everything she made was my favorite. And I learned from her and became a professional caterer in my adult life. And it enabled me to buy 2 7-room homes in Florida, not including anything my husband earned. And it just was, as I look back, it was a beautiful life. It wasn't that sad things didn't happen. They occur in everybody's life. But my parents taught me how to get through them and deal with them and go on with life. And I'm now a little over a year away from 90. And I still live by those ethics.
Were your parents strict?
My father was stricter than my mother. He was a disciplinarian. He was a perfectionist with himself. He was a professional pianist. And at 93 years of age, he was still practicing 2 hours a day, every single day of his life, to keep up his skill. And he made good name and reputation in Boston area, which was considered a major player in the country's positions.
If you ever got in trouble, how did your parents punish you?
There were a couple of ways. You would have to go without supper, and that was a punishment worse than beating to miss a meal, and or go to your room, and that was it. There was the threat of a spanking, and if it was really a crime like talking back to a parent, it would be, do you want a spanking with a strap? Now, he was not a child beater, and I got to make that very clear, but just the threat of it was enough to get me on the right track.
What about you made your parents most proud?
I don't know if I know the answer to that question because they were proud of everything that each of us did. We ended up three sisters. I'm not sure if I said before I was born a twin, but she only lasted 6 weeks. And my folks were the proudest people going and weren't ashamed to show it.
Are your siblings still alive?
Yes,
How's your relationship with your siblings?
excellent. We're very close. I'm trying to think if I know that one of them lives here in Florida with me, close by, and the other one is between California and Texas. And she became a winner in one of the Miss America contests years and years ago. I couldn't give you dates or anything, but beautiful, beautiful young lady. And the middle sister was what we called the brain of the family. But when I say brain, beyond genius. And but sweet as sugar, and we're still very close.
Wonderful. What are their names again?
The middle sister is Judith Arlene, and her married name was Kessler. We were all born Green as the last name, which I didn't find out till I was 16 was an adopted name because my father was on radio and television and he wanted a name that didn't sound related to any religion or country. So he chose the color green.
Well, let's shift topics a little bit and talk about love. How do you know when you found the one?
I married him. I knew he was the one that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. The only wrong thing he ever did was die too young. I lost him before he was 60 years of age. And I still to this day miss him, but he's with me. He's with me.
What was it about him that made you certain that he was the right person for you?
He had all the things I was looking for. He was tall enough. That was for starts because I was tall for a girl, a female, and he had a charming personality. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He was as brilliant as they come. He ended up as not only a teacher, an elementary school teacher, but a principal of the schools. And they wanted him to go into superintendent, but he wanted to remain close to the kids, so he didn't accept the offer.
And what was his name?
Julie. I called him Julie. His given name was Julius Max Weiner.
Do you believe in love at first sight?
No, that I think you have to really get to know a person and know what their idiosyncrasies are, what the things you are that they might do that you don't enjoy, that you don't like it, that you don't admire. And so the answer to the question is unequivocally no.
Do you think it's appropriate to kiss on a first date?
I think there's nothing wrong with it. If the guy seems right, doesn't make any difference. I ended up marrying the guy that I went on, that I really had feelings that might possibly become a husband.
Do you think that there's any, as time has changed and the thought of love and marriage, so like there have been shifts socially, do you think that there's anything, there have been improvements in that regard, or do you think that there's something that younger generations are missing about the true meaning of love?
I don't know if most people know the right traits to look for in a partner. I feel that looks is the last thing, whether it's handsome, beautiful, ugly. I had an uncle that would not be classified as a handsome man by any means, but he was the sweetest, dearest personality you ever met in your life. One of my father's brothers, and that's my outlook on it.
So when I asked you about your husband, the first thing you said he was tall.
Yes, yes. He was 5'11" and a half. He didn't make 6 feet, but he was 5'11" and a half.
You should just give him that extra half inch, I feel.
All the time. I wouldn't cheat him of an eighth of an inch or 16th of an inch.
How old were you when you got married?
22.
Do you feel like that is a good age to get married?
I happened to get married for the right reasons. And that is, I examined the personality, the intelligence of the man I was with. And for me, it was the perfect time. We spent a year dating before we got married. And then it was a go for both of us.
Every relationship has highs and lows. How did you get through the hard times?
I am a strong believer in a supreme being. And that's my solace when I need it. That's my encouragement when I need it. And that's how I got through tougher times. And I've had my share of them, truly.
What are your children's names and what years were they born?
Okay. Michael Lawrence Weiner was my son, firstborn. And when they said to me, they asked if I wanted to know the sex of the baby in utero. And I said, no. I said, I do everything naturally and I want to know. I don't want to know. And when she came over and said, you have a son, and she brought that baby, and I was concerned, would I be able to love a boy as much as a girl? Because all my life growing up, my mother said, "There's nothing like daughters. There's nothing like daughters." She birthed 4 of them. I think I mentioned before I was an identical twin. And I discovered at that time that was I said to her, "That's the only thing you ever said to me that I thought was wrong." And she did love him as much as she could love a girl.
You mentioned your oldest son. What's your other child's name?
Masha Ellen Arena. She's married to a young man. They're not so young anymore. They're in the late 60s. But I'm not so young anymore either. But a darling man. I adore both my married-ins, as I call them. And we get along famously. And I get the feeling that they tolerate the in-law, mother-in-law very well.
That's good. It doesn't always work out that way.
It doesn't always. It very rarely works out that well.
How did you know you wanted to be a mother?
That was a good given because my mother always talked about babies and how you love babies, and it's just a natural thing. Being a woman, I was going to be a mother. I knew I couldn't be a father.
What does it feel like to give birth?
It's painful. But it's a beautiful kind of pain because you know you're pushing through another human being. And that's the miracle of life as far as I'm concerned. That an act of love could produce a human being that will grow up. And my 2 have grown up to be bright, close to brilliant, in fact, possibly brilliant individuals, and they've married well. So my life has been very beautiful.
Do you have any thoughts on an appropriate age, the ideal age to have children?
My personal feeling is that they should be at least 18, but better go to 20 or 21. That's my feelings. But it's never too late.
If this was your last opportunity to leave a message for your children, what would you say?
Oh, that's a toughie. I wished I had a pre-warning on that question. Both of them grew up and developed the way I would have hoped for. They both are fabulous individuals, care about the world as I have always done, and my husband always did. And they've made me the proudest mother there is.
Were you a strict parent?
I was not as strict as my father, but I demanded certain things of them. And they both grew up to be very fine individuals, and they both married nicely. So we have a very happy family, and we're still very close.
Is there anything about you that you wish your children knew about you, but they don't?
No, I've been very honest with them.
Would you say you were a good mother?
Not only would I say it, but hundreds of my friends and associates have said it.
All right, Carol, what's the most amount of money you ever won and how did you spend it?
Ooh. That's one of the most difficult questions you've asked me already, because I never gave it any thought. Um, I guess I would say $5. Playing cards or bridge or poker or rummy.
Makes sense. If you'd won the lottery, it would have popped right into mind.
I don't know if I would have known what I wanted to buy at this time. I probably would be doling it out to the kids and the grandkids. There are no great-grandchildren yet.
Do you have a secret celebrity crush?
No. No. The one crush I had was on my husband.
Very sweet. Not even a secret celebrity crush. Wow, okay.
No, there was nobody that I ever thought would make me as happy as he did. And that, don't misunderstand it. It doesn't mean that we didn't have disagreements and think different ways. We did, and I was more at that than he. But we always managed to work them out civilly.
Tell me about your first kiss.
I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, I remember who it was. It was nothing. Yeah. It was just two puckers up, reaching for each other with our lips and kissing.
What's the most serious crime you've ever committed?
Oh. I probably absorbed an item that somebody had given out us to work on for whatever task I was involved in, and I pocketed it.
Do you have a most embarrassing moment that comes to mind?
No, not really. Nothing that sticks out.
Do you have a favorite joke?
I love humor, and so I learn a lot of jokes, but there's not one that I can quote offhand as a favorite.
Have you ever seen a ghost?
No. Not that I know of.
Do you have any hidden talents?
Well, they're not so hidden. I happen to be a very good cook. And I say that not out of conceit, but because I was a volunteer in the synagogue to which I belonged, I became, by demand of the congregation, a professional caterer, because so many people were asking me to cater their functions that I couldn't keep up with it without making enemies. So somebody said to me, you got to start charging. And that was one of the most difficult tasks that I had to do, was to figure out what you charge for your talent, for your knowledge. Because, you know that you got to charge for the products you buy, but what do you charge for what you conjure up in your mind?
How did you figure that out?
Trial and error. I started off as low as I could get without losing, and God was very good to me and stood by me and guided me all the right ways. And it developed into a big business, catering business.
Do you have any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, those who are just starting off and facing a lot of headwinds?
Follow your dreams. Don't be dissuaded by people who are either jealous of you or uh, for whatever reasons they try to talk you out of it. Decide for yourself whether you can handle the tough times that'll come along. And if you feel that you can, go to it.
There were a few items that you had asked that I asked you, and I want to go through those real quick. Are we good there? Which we've already done a bunch of that, actually. Talk about your family origin and background.
My mother's parents were born in Russia when it was free Russia. They always said white Russia as opposed to red Russia, which was communistic. And my father's father was born in Austria. I know nothing about my grandmother's, well, I take that back. My mother's mother was born in Russia, but she died before I was born because I was named after her. And in the Jewish religion, we name after the deceased, not the living. And my father's mother, I never knew, but his stepmother, who coincidentally was my mother's sister. Think about that one for a little while. So I always called her aunt and him grandpa, my father's father. And everybody would say, "Oh, your mother, your aunt lives at home with her parents?" And I'd say, "No, that's her husband." And as children, they were very confused at the family relationships. But we knew what it was. It was often written up in the Boston newspapers as a fact of interest, an item of interest.
Talked about one of them, but you had mentioned you had various occupations through your life. Can you talk about your various occupations?
If I can remember them, I'll talk about them. The most recent was the catering. That's what I went out of business in. Out of the working field, I should say, or career earning. I've been a teacher. I've been a musician of several instruments. I play violin. I play piano. I took up guitar. I took up ukulele. I sang incessantly because my mother had a beautiful voice and was a singer, and I became a singer. And music has always been probably the most important subject to me of my life. And it's a happy time.
Is there a certain musical genre or band or singer who really stands out to you?
I love all music. becomes a problem because there's only so much you can spend time listening to. But if it's music and it's on key, because I have a perfect relative pitch hindrance, and it is a hindrance because sometimes I'm cringing if somebody's slightly off key, and but I love music. That's my favorite of all subjects, and eating.
Well, the off key, that might be a lingering artifact of your father's perfectionism.
It's a fact of my precise hearing. That's what it's related to. You know, I have a perfect relative pitch hearing.
You had mentioned something in the pre-interview documentation about wanting to share some traits about your personal physical traits. And one of the things that you had mentioned was a struggle with weight through your life. Can you talk about that experience and how that's affected you both emotionally and physically?
I don't know that it's affected me, but I've lived through it because I love life and I wanted to keep living and enjoying it as best I could. And I'm really not sure how to follow through on discussing it.
That's fine. It was a note that you had, and so we don't have to get into too much detail. Maybe it was related to, were there any physical traits of yours that you wanted to share with your children and grandchildren so that they're aware of genetics? It may have been along those lines.
You may have touched on it too. I've always been very honest with my kids, and I've always spoken my mind with everybody. And so if I had something to say, I said it. I tried not to ever be offensive to anybody. That's very important to me. And I think that's about the most I can offer you right now. If I think of anything, I'll let you know. I'll give you a PS.
That sounds perfect. Let's do a lightning round. I'm going to ask you a few like favorite things, and you can answer just really quickly. Kind of, we'll rattle them off. What, Carol, is your favorite color?
Pinks and reds.
Your favorite film?
Comedies.
Does one stand out to you in particular?
No. No.
Favorite book?
I never became a big reader, and I don't know why.
Favorite place you've ever been to before?
I think Hawaii. Because that was
Favorite dessert?
oh, there's no favorites. All of them. Any and all that you put in front of me.
What's your secret. Do you have a secret to living into your late 80s and beyond?
I give credit to my parents. It's no secret. They knew how to live and enjoy life. And that was one of the finest traits I could take away from them.
What in particular, in what ways do you feel like you enjoy life that has helped propel you into um, your age today and beyond?
Just the fact that with my God given brain, because that's who gets the credit for that, I take advantage of every single thing I can. Every breath I take, I'm grateful for. And every ache and pain that I don't have, I'm thrilled about. And I recognize all of those that are there. And I've learned, and this, again, I credit to my parents, and mostly my mother, you just gotta recognize the importance of what's happening and deal with it to the best of your own ability.
It's hard for a lot of people to keep a positive outlook.
Oh, that's probably the hardest thing they do. And I feel sorry for them. But I credit not my own ability, but my parents' upbringing, their attitudes.
Do you have recommendations for those who are going through hard times and
Oh, I'm always willing to give advice. I always do.
what would your advice be in a situation like that?
You're saying if somebody says to me, well, how do you do it? The answer.
How do you stay positive and at least have a positive outlook and a can-do attitude even in the height of in the deepest of dark places?
Okay. Yeah. I talk to myself. I think to myself all the time. I could wallow in self-pity just as easily as everybody else. But I will not allow myself to do it. I just keep looking for something that will brighten my day, that will make me happy. The mere fact that I'm walking around pain-free, ailment-free, other than overweight, keeps me alive and going.
Holistically speaking, thinking back on your life, at what age, both like mind and body, did you feel your best?
I think it's today that I've made it this far and and in as good condition as I have physically and mentally, that I'm as content with living as I've always been, is what keeps me going.
The inverse of that, at what age do you feel you felt your worst?
When I was 100 pounds heavier than I am now. And I'm still over 200 pounds. So that was probably when I felt the worst.
How did you change that?
Talking to myself, thinking to myself all the time positively. And that again comes straight from Mama. Don't be negative. Don't be negative. You got to think positively. She was brilliant. She was positively brilliant in the true sense of the word. Because not only was she knowledgeable, she was the first girl in a school of 600 Gentiles, and she was the second Jewish girl. She and her sister were the only two Jewish girls in an all-Irish high school. And she won a 4-year scholarship to Simmons College, which at the time was considered like the Harvard University of Massachusetts, you know.
They have enough per capita in America?
It's Boston.
Oh, they did. The living areas, people congregate to where they feel the most comfortable with other people of the same background.
Yeah, my uncle lives in Boston.
A lot of Irish there.
Yeah, a lot of
That's what
Irish.
he says, but I didn't know there was.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Lots of O names. O'Brien,
Yeah,
O'Malley, yeah.
O'Neill.
yeah, lots of those. You were talking about your mother being Jewish, growing up in a Catholic school and stuff. Let's maybe talk a little bit about faith. You already addressed this a little bit earlier, but I want to ask directly, do you believe in God?
I absolutely do. I don't know what God looks like. I don't know what sex God might be, if it is a sex, but there is some supreme happening that guides me through life.
How do you know that?
Because I wanted to know it. I made it up myself. I honestly don't know how to answer the question, but that's the way I think. And I feel sorry for the people who can't solve their own problems. They're so busy wallowing in self-pity, they can't solve their own problems.
What was your most profound spiritual experience?
I think giving birth. That out of an act of love between two people, you could produce another human being. I think that's what I consider the most profound.
That's a good one. I think so.
Thank you. Yeah. And there's never a mistake. None of us make a dog or a cat. You know, when you think of it, and I do, my mind goes like that sometimes. How does each being know to stay within their own limits? Their body knows to stay within their own limits.
We've made an oopsie-daisy with holes and stuff before.
You know, Jerry Seinfeld has a skit on it. I won't do it justice, but he says something like, you know, it's a really incredible event when 2 people go into a room and 3 people come out.
Yeah.
That's great. Was there ever a time in your life where your faith was really challenged? Whoa. I just hope everybody's okay.
Yeah. That sounded like first it sounded like a door closing, but then it sounded like somebody may have fallen against the wall.
Maybe just check.
Or something.
Like, it's kind of weird. I asked that question about faith being challenged, and the whole room shook. I'm going to ask again and hope I don't get struck by lightning or anything. But was there a moment in your life when your faith was the most challenged?
During World War II, when 6 million Jews were killed just because they were Jewish. But as far as I can remember back, that was the only time.
Well, that's a standout for sure. Let's talk about that a little bit. Um, particularly, I know the Boston area. Um, the Irish, it's very highly Irish, Irish Catholic, very strict in the thought process. Did you face religious prejudice growing up?
I was aware of it, but I was not impacted by it. I knew that others felt prejudice, and it was disturbing to me because I couldn't figure out why. Here, the Gentiles were worshiping a Jewish child. That's their God. I recognize he was a Jewish man born of Jewish parents, but it didn't make him a god. He was an outstanding human being for sure, but it's still, that's not, in my way of thinking, that's not a god. It is a leader, though.
Just a cool dude.
Yeah, that's another way of putting it.
I'm gonna bounce around a little bit, and I hope you'll excuse me, and I'll pick up on a couple different things as we go. Um, Actually, I'm gonna go here. You talked a little bit about your catering business, and it sounds like from a young age you were thinking maybe entrepreneurially. You purchased a home in Florida, and you said you rented it out instead of living there.
Well, that was later in my life, in my married life. It wasn't, right
Oh, okay.
early. Yeah.
Well, let's. Was financial wealth something you ever experienced?
It all depends on what you consider wealth. See, we didn't have, in the scheme of things, because I married a school teacher, a male elementary school teacher, who were notoriously paid the least of all the 4-year educated teachers. And I just never got involved with that way of thinking.
In work, you were running a culinary or a catering business. Um, how did you get through? Talk about some of the stresses that you felt along the way, and how did you deal with those?
Like my mother taught me to deal with everything else. Go headlong into it, figure it out, and it'll solve itself.
Did you ever get to a point in your career where you just felt underwater? You were struggling.
Never. I loved every second of that career. And it's not the only career I had. I started off as a young married woman. I was in the advertising business for the Boston Herald Traveler. It wasn't a schlock outfit. And I enjoyed that. And just everything I've done along the way, I've enjoyed doing.
Out of everything you've learned through your life, in what area would you say you have the greatest level of expertise?
Eating.
That's great. What's your highest level of education?
I went 2 years to Boston University. School of Business, which was, I was one of 7 girls in a class of 380 males.
What year was that?
I'd have to figure it back.
My question along those lines was, did you fit? That's obviously you were a minority. It was not as common for women to go to college.
Oh, absolutely not.
How did you feel? Did you feel accepted? Did you have any challenges?
No, no.
Same question on that, except in the workplace. You had your own business, so it may be a little bit different. But did you feel challenges through your career at being accepted and welcomed as a female entrepreneur?
No, because it snowballed by itself. I started off as a volunteer in my own synagogue, doing the Saturday morning plates or Friday night plates. That's when they needed help. They needed hands to run the kitchen. And originally somebody else bought all the products, figured out what you needed. It got to the point where I became the leader in deciding what we needed and what we bought, and I just fell into the business. And I made a good living at it, obviously.
Was there ever throughout your life a fear or anxiety that continued to grip you?
It wasn't a fear, but it was a thought all my life that because I was so overweight that I would die young. But I'm only a little more than a year away from 90, so I guess that was erroneous.
Tell me about an important friendship in your life.
I would say the best friend I ever made was the man I married.
From how you've spoken about him, it sounds like true love.
Oh, it was. It was. And I felt unworthy of it because I was what was always considered well overweight for a female. But he loved every inch of it. And I loved every inch of him.
What's the best advice you've ever received? And as those words came out of my mouth, I actually think you've answered that a couple times about your mother and your father.
I was just about to say that I was told to always be true to yourself. And that was from my mother and father.
What gives life meaning?
Meaning. What do you mean by the word meaning? What are you going after?
Well, I was looking for your interpretation of it. But another way is, do you feel like you know why we're here and what life is all about?
I think I know what life is all about. And with that, I would add that it's to do the best we can for as long as we are alive. I don't know what's on the other side. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not in a hurry to get to it, but I don't know what's there. I know what I think might be there. And in that regard, I am looking forward to it, but I'm not in a hurry to get there because there's too much that I still want to see here.
What's the most amazing technological advance that you've witnessed in your lifetime?
I think the automobile. They were very rare when I was a kid. And now people have 2 and 4, 5, 6, 8 cars, trucks, and trade them in every year. I heard my own Boston accent come out when I said cars.
I'm going to ask you, can you say, park your car in Harvard Yard?
Park your car in Harvard Yard.
Oh, your way. I don't want you to say it the north. I want you to say your way.
Park your car in Harvard Yard.
My mother, she had it pretty good, but there were certain words I first noticed it. I made the tennis team in high school, and she said, "Congratulations on making varsity." Just slipped out.
Yeah, that happens frequently. Yeah.
Are you optimistic about the future of humanity?
Well, there again, I have faith in a supreme being. I don't know what it is or who it is or how it constitutes or how it works, but I do have faith that there is a supreme being that governs us, and I do have faith in humanity. I hope man is not stupid enough to destroy it.
Nuclear power and weaponry and stuff was post-World War II became a major thing, and then into the 80s, 60s, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. Was nuclear war a concern of yours?
Very much so. Very much so. And I couldn't understand why human beings are so out to destroy each other. Why they can't learn to live with each other. If God made them, or if they don't believe in a God, somehow or other we're here. And I would hate to think that it could be destroyed, but there is a possibility that it could happen.
Is there anything left you feel that you need to accomplish before the end of your life?
I would like to get back to a size 16. I was there once in my life. I have been over, just barely over 300 pounds at one time. And I'm only 5'6", and maybe a quarter, although I've been shrinking. But I would like to get back to that size again.
What would you say is the best part about getting older?
That I get to see my kids and the world, how it's evolving and how far it's come and all the new things. And although I can't picture what it is, I know there are still going to be more miracles coming along. I have that faith. There'll be things that they'll think of us as the old days, the olden days.
What's one thing that you like most about who you are as a person?
That I inherited my mother's personality. positive, smiling, living it to the fullest. Do you feel like you know my mother now?
Based on knowing you, she seems like she was an amazing woman.
She was. She was. She absolutely was. And I was blessed enough to be born to her.
Is there any particular historical event that's really etched into your memory, really stands out?
World War II. I have not dealt with that to a feeling of comfort ever. Why? My question was why?
Is there anything that you'd like to share that nobody knows about you?
I think I've been as honest as I can, if not with everybody else, at least with myself. So I don't think there's anything that that people don't know about me.
Your grandchildren. How many grandchildren do you have?
I have 2 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. My daughter had 2 sons, and my son had 2 daughters.
What's the most rewarding part about being a grandmother?
I don't know if I ever thought about being rewarded for it. It's a delight. It's a pleasure that there's no other way you can get. And anything pleasurable, I welcome.
We have talked a lot about your husband and incredible stories about him, and this seemed like true love, your relationship. How did you evolve from his passing? How did his passing impact your life, and how were you able to move on?
I don't know if this will give you the how, but out of respect to him and how much I loved him, I knew I had to do it. And God gave me the strength to do it.
Processing. I'm
I,
forming a question.
I could read it across your forehead.
Forming a question, but
Yeah,
slow processor.
Okay.
What would be your advice for others in a situation like that? He passed away when he was relatively young. Do you have advice for those that are going through loss such as that of a true love or a significant other? How you move on from that in a positive way?
I happen to feel that he's still with me, within my heart, within my mind. He's part of my body. And I will be seeing him and joining him, I hope, because I was a little mischievous, and I'm not sure I'm going to end up. I may go down. I'm glad I've written John Day too.
It's been a fun interview. Um, some final things. Well, tell me your thoughts about living at the atrium. Do you enjoy living at the atrium?
I've been pleasantly surprised. I used to volunteer in facilities like this, and so I've seen others, and this is a scale as far as I'm concerned from what I've seen. Are there improvements I could make? Absolutely. But am I keeping my big mouth shut for the first time? Yes. Because they're doing all right without me.
Would you recommend the atrium to others?
Absolutely. I do. Yeah. Yeah, because I worked in enough I'm talking now in two and some occasionally 3 states. I've worked in other facilities and volunteered in other facilities. And I find this A scale.
What's your favorite part about what do you think the best things are about living here?
I would give the credit to the staff. For the most part, they do a fabulous job. If you give them a smile, they know how to smile back. They're not so involved in what they're doing that they don't remember to smile back. Not everybody, but the majority. And I think that's a wonderful feature. And I've been meaning to give them the compliment in the books where it will count for them.
So would you recommend the atrium?
Absolutely. I do.
What have you thought about this experience, the Posterity Project?
I found it very interesting. And I'm glad I was chosen to speak on it. And I hope I haven't been too loquacious.
Well, that's an important part. We want to hear from you. What do you think? Our mission, the Posterity Project, the mission of ours is to help people preserve and share their personal legacy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that mission?
I think it's a wonderful aim. I think it's a fabulous aim. I periodically start a autobiography. I've been doing it for 70, 80 years already, but never completed it, never got even partway through it. But I've started it a number of times, and I still do in my mind. You know, before I fall asleep, I'm thinking what I would write, and sometimes when I get up and want to loll around, I'm thinking what I would write and say and so on. So this was a delightful occasion for me.
And for us too.
Thank you.
Carol, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's been great getting to know you. Some incredible stories. Excited to get the video prepared and share it with you and your family.
I can't wait. Thank you very much.